Hi all, welcome to Sembang series, Sembang session. This week with me, my colleague Encik Adri, and he is the Group CFO of GK Aqua. Welcome Adri, and before that, I want to wish Selamat Hari Malaysia.
Selamat Hari Malaysia to everyone.
So now, without further ado, we jump into the show because we're already in our feet for Sembang session today.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Adri. I'm currently the Group CFO for GK Aqua. A little bit about myself. I'm from Selangor. I'm 51 years old, married with 3 kids. Prior to this, I've been working in quite a diverse industries. I started my career in audit, then moving on to corporate finance, and later into private equity, and finally I served with a government agency tasked with developing the biotechnology industry in Malaysia. I tried my hand at being an entrepreneur because for me I needed to understand the struggles of the entrepreneur, being on the other side of the fence, so to speak. And when this opportunity came for me to be part of the GK group, I think it was too good an opportunity to pass out.
That's fantastic. So today, why we want to interview Encik Adri? So today's theme is Sembang Finance, and we really want to dive into finance stories, right? So as finance is a very critical part or backbone of every operations, every agenda, every institutions, right? So I think everybody, end of the day, finance determines the motivation behind any economic development. So finance is a very integral part of any activities, right? So human get up in the morning, if there is no motivation,
Right.
and then there's nothing, right? You can't say, hey, you go to work today, I'll pay you one hamburger, right? It doesn't interest them. So Adri, so going back to your early days, right? Maybe you can give us a little bit of narrative why you actually went and studied finance and where you studied.
Okay.
Brag a bit about yourself.
Okay lah. Okay. So there's actually a very simple story to this. After SPM, going back a step, my original ambition was always to be an architect.
Wow.
Okay, so that was the interest from, I think, as far back as I can remember, maybe 9 or 10. But after SPM, the opportunity that was given, and also it so happened at the time that I had relatives who were in accounting, who were doing accounting. So they were asking me to look at this, to explore this idea of being a chartered accountant. So when the opportunity came for me to study accounting in Australia, so I took that up. So I received a scholarship for it. So went to study in Australia. So I was there for 5 years. And that is basically how it started. It was not really like a plan kind of thing.
And you still came back, right? So this is where from a first show when I've been interviewed
Dr. Gan,
colleague Dr. Gan. He came back from Australia, he came back from US. So you also did come back to Malaysia, right?
Yep.
So what was the aspiration? You could have just stayed back in Australia, but what was really the aspiration to come back to Malaysia?
Correct. For me personally, of course, family ties is one thing. That's something you cannot deny, right? But Malaysia's economy in the 90s was a growing economy. It was one of the Asian tigers.
Yeah.
Asian tigers. So I mean, the opportunity was there for you to grow. If you wanted to use accounting as a starting point, finance as a starting point, into corporates, into business. So I think that was the ideal time to do it because we were growing at the time. So at the back of my head, the idea always was not to remain in finance forever, but rather to go into management, go into business, with the aim of actually, learning in detail about one or two particular businesses and try to be really good at it. Because that's where to me personally, where the actual value is, where you can make a difference.
So I always joke this with my colleagues, right? When they say in the interviews with accountants or finance people, say 1 + 1 is it equals to 2 or 11, right? Often it's like the answer should be what you want, right? Okay. So going back to that, right? How do you see finance diving into entrepreneurs? Because entrepreneurs like me, when I start, no idea about finance, right? So talk about balance sheet, profit and loss. You want to do valuation. Discounted cash flows. There's so many jargons we have to learn. And of course, after 5 years of GK, now finally we have you as our CFO. So how do you see the importance of finance in any startups? Is it a priority from day one? Because always people tell me you need to have a good finance person and good legal person when you run a company. But of course, as a startup, we cannot
Yeah,
afford that,
agreed.
right?
Yeah.
So how do you see or advise to entrepreneurs? Is that mandatory to have finance person from day one, or you can outsource?
So if you were to look at it, okay, looking at the startup journey using say GK an example, when you started, I think there was like maybe 4 people, right?
Two.
Okay, 2 people. So this point becomes even more important. So with an organization that size, it doesn't make sense for you to have a finance person per se. But what you do need is someone with the capabilities to advise you. And normally at that scale, the reporting requirements are a lot less when you're a Sendirian Berhad company, a small one. So these things can be outsourced now, even more so. And one of the things that trends that I'm seeing is going online, cloud computing.
Yep.
That is actually a big thing because it allows you to basically monitor your accounts or do your basically from anywhere, and all the information is accessible. During my time, you actually had to come to the office and look at the stacks of files on the shelf and whatnot. So technology makes things easier.
Yep.
It makes things easier and makes things more accessible to those who don't have the capabilities.
Yes, so I totally agree with you. Digitalizing your accounting is one thing. I think as entrepreneurs or the founder, CEO should be very revenue driven
Yeah.
rather than just thinking about all the back
Yeah.
end of the finance, right?
I agree. Adding a point to that, when you're just starting out, based on my own experience at being an entrepreneur, it's always the bread and butter issue. So
Yep.
you kena makan, you have to
Yes,
you
food on the table matters.
full food on the table. So that's where your thinking is oriented. You go for revenue maximization, you go for cost minimization, bootstrapping. That's very common in startups. So but as you grow, these things changes. The reporting requirements changes. So and that's where you start
There's a
employing
cultural
people.
changes
Correct.
from entrepreneurship to small medium enterprise and
Yes.
then to corporations, right? So talking about funding ecosystem, as you know, GK started to be very glad, thanks to Cradle again, thanks to Mostly, thanks to MPDC, all these different champions have really wholeheartedly supported us. But hatching from that situation where we make real revenues,
Yep.
real profits, and then we raise equity fundings or debt financing. So in that landscape, what will, as a CFO, what will be your aspiration? Is it more raise more equity rounds, or is it more make more revenue and daringly go into banks and take debt financing to scale up? So what will be your aspiration here?
Okay. Looking at the particular scenario we're in, GQ Aqua and the group in general, um, I'm not really want to go for endless rounds of financing. For me, what is important, yes, financing is important. You get your initial seed rounds in, maybe a pre-seed or maybe a Series A. But what's more important for you to build the business, because that will be the substantial bullet for you to pitch
Yep.
for further financing rounds. And touch wood, if something goes sour, you'll always have that to fall back on. What you don't want is a situation where you keep raising money only to have your core business disrupted for whatever reason,
Yep.
and you are in a position where,
Scaling up globally
yeah,
with unknown
unknown,
territories,
yes.
unknown
So
resources.
the idea here is to build that core business first, and
Yeah.
I think that's the thing that we as a group should be looking on. Not using the core business as a starting point, the Udangala for GK, then expanding on the ecosystem that we can develop.
Yep.
And this is actually the interesting part for me here, because to me, this group GK is not just about udang. Although when people ask me, you kerja mana, I kerja,
Kita belah udang.
the easiest thing to
That's a
say
sexy
is,
thing to say
it's the
anyways.
easiest thing to say. Yeah. But no, it's not. It's beyond that. It's beyond udang. It's beyond even feed. You're looking at an entire ecosystem. The things that we're working on, we have planned is so interesting.
Thanks, Adri. And really, it's not flattering me, but that's the fact we are looking into a real ecosystem in terms of economic development. So now, since we're touching a bit on economic development, I just want to jump more into socio-economic status. Right now, we are worrying because 50% or more kids from school after Form 5, after SPM, are going into gig economy,
Yeah.
right? And they are not getting the college degree or micro credentials. for some reasons that money is important. As we said, finance is our daily life is driven by that, and that's one corner what's happening. The other corner is like the credit system.
Yeah.
No, I still remember during my early days when I graduated from college. My one of my mentors said, "Credit card is the money you spend which you don't." Was really a remark on credit card. Now we have gone beyond credit cards because to get credit cards you need to have some statutory incomes. I know you have to declare this and that, but now it's like notion of eat now, pay later, and there's a lot of digital banks are coming out in terms of borrowings. But if we crystallize the entire ecosystem, right, I don't really see a real effort put into making more food. I mean, we go into where we come from, agriculture. So agriculture, there is no I can buy feed now, pay later. There is no such thing. But I can eat now, pay later. I mean, for me, it's really a notion of feeling. Why are we leading into the direction? You're not putting in an actual economic development, but you're creating more debt. So the country is leading to more debt deficit rather than economic development. What's your thoughts on that?
Okay, I think this also has to do with. Um,
I'm
many
sure this is a
countries-
very hot question,
Yeah, yeah,
so,
many-
so
I mean,
take your time.
So many countries. Okay, you look at probably one of the biggest consumer nations, the US. Their entire economy is based on debt, and that's why they have such high foreign debt and whatnot. But for us, our concerns are a bit more, I would say, on the ground. We have actual problems with unemployment, incomes in general, farmer incomes. You know, on one hand, you have one group that's putting food on the table. That's your farmers.
Yep, our
And-
farmers.
Yeah, our farmers. And interesting statistic that I encountered recently was, the financial system loans to SMEs. Looking at a recent report by Bank Negara, in 2022 they gave out something like 500 billion to SMEs.
Yep.
Can you guess what percentage went to agriculture? Not just agriculture, fisheries and forestry.
Probably 1%.
Its amount disbursed was just 3%.
Yeah, so talking about that,
3%.
right? We went through that. We have a couple of millions of ringgit in the bank account, to be honest with you, and we asked for revolving credit from our beloved, and they came back with the notion saying that, oh no, we are not comfortable to give us a overdraft facility, and they said they're not comfortable to give to our kind of business. So that really hurt me to. What do you really actually mean by our kind of business? Is that something really the banks don't fancy? So your statistics speaks for that, Adri. I think this is a real issue.
Yeah, definitely. Because when you consider the fact that agriculture constitutes 8% of GDP, and yet you're only getting, actually in terms of loans approved, it's only 2.6%. Of the loans approved goes to agriculture, and yet it's making up 8% of the GDP. So there's a mismatch there. I mean, anyone can see that. You look at numbers, can. So for me, financing for agriculture, it's pretty obvious that the banks in general are not, like you say, comfortable giving money. And to some degree, this would be due to the inherent risk of agriculture you're dealing with.
Correct.
Live things.
Correct.
But having said that, this is not 1980 or 1990.
Correct.
You have technology.
So this is exactly I want to get to, right? Technology can bridge the gap, bring different matrices to allow farmers to actually take out the matrices and evaluate them.
Yeah,
whether this person having a good size of the land, whether the crop history of selling, whether this will consistently selling. I think technology or digitalization process can match that. I think we are evolving to 5G rollout and internet as much as the biggest gift of the current era, and you and me both seen the other side and the current side of the world. I think this is where sometimes I get personally very frustrated. Okay, you guys don't want to give us money. Okay, let's say start our own fintech company. I think that's why we have evolved, right?
Yes.
When we start with our udang gala, there's no brew stock, so we start our own brew stock. And then there's no feed, then we start our own feed. Then there's no farmers, we start with muga. Now we don't have money, let's start also a fintech business, right? So much so we are diving and starting on our own, right? So how do you see this whole economic transformation taking place versus some digital banks are coming out? Should they really look into agriculture sector as one of the biggest asset rather than liability?
Certainly, most certainly. They need there's a learning process that needs to take place. Traditionally, based on my experience from what I've seen, the problem with agriculture and the understanding of what the business is about. So, and from there they just take the position that no, it is risky.
Yeah.
But what we need essentially are niche financiers,
Yeah.
specialized financiers who have an understanding of the
Sorry to
industry.
disrupt. So that's why we have Agro Bank in line. I'm sure we got support from Agro Bank.
Yes.
So how can we democratize more financing flowing into from Agro Bank, particularly to agriculture sector? Say, hey, I mean, I just want to tell our cameraman this is a very hot topic, so we just need another 2 more minutes
Another 2
extended, right? Don't rush us. So yeah, so how do you see that happening?
So the big gap here, you have Agrobank as a lending institution with traditional, I would say, credit evaluation methods and all that.
Correct,
Right?
and they still goes through CTOs.
Correct. Yeah. So essentially, it's like a bank for the for agriculture. But what I was talking about in terms of niche finances is having a digital bank or a party that can A, provide financing, B, ensure that the farmers succeed, provide assistance to the farmers. You know?
Yep.
So it's not enough that you have agencies helping the farmers without having a view of the money aspect that goes into it. So for me, the ideal situation would be a party which can channel funds to the farmers, at the same time ensure the success. And in doing so, ensure that the repayment is made.
So I would sum up this, right? So in terms of perspective of Jidin Bank, yes, you want to give borrowing to farmers. As you said, they need to evaluate and make sure they success. So I think on one step ahead, the digital banks also can look into entrepreneurs who are actually having more technology to reduce risk,
Correct.
increase the output. So
Correct.
if they back the entrepreneurs in terms of debt financing with less interest, I would presume, and that they also on the other side of the fence they match the financing with farmers and putting them into hand to hand. I think that will be a
There will
great
be
success story.
Agree, definitely. The banks need to make use of industry players who have the capabilities to reduce their risk.
Yeah. So this is where, when we go to industrial players, right? Nowadays, I often see the concept of food security blatantly abused by large corporations who have no experience on growing any single crops, right? I mean, I didn't want to name them, but that's how the sexiness gets into food security among large corporations. And at the same time, we're also seeing carbon credits, ESGs. So there's a lot of bandwagons people are jumping into just to have their vested interests driven forward. But still, the farmers who grow the crop 3 feet above the ground, or like us 3 feet below the ground, are completely ignored. I think this is something we want to address more in the work we do as in GK. So Adri, so I think time is really essence today. I think we have taken a bit more than we allowed. So any last word for? Sure, you dressed very well, and
you.
yeah, you want to give the audience some remarks.
So some parting words. Firstly, Selamat Hari Malaysia to everyone, and to those entrepreneurs out there, who are just starting out. Go ahead, pursue your dreams. Don't really be worried about the financing part, especially if you're in agriculture. Of course, if you're into aquaculture, please do come and see us.
Yes. So Selamat Hari Malaysia to everyone. The concluding message: if you wanting to be agripreneur or ecopreneur, please always come and see us. Our advice and guidance is always free of charge. I'm sure. Next episode.